planning policy review. And that will involve council adopt the following: a community participation plan and a stormwater drainage policy. And that council approved compliance and enforcement policy for keeping of animals in residential properties to go out to public exhibition for 28 days per council's community participation plan. Move councillor Nichols, second councillor Rutter, open for discussion.
Mr Mayor, just in regards to that compliance and enforcement policy for the keeping of animals at residential properties, it's almost like they're trying to tell people what to have for breakfast. Harsh.
Certainly, thank you, Mr Mayor. Under the local government regulations, there's a schedule of orders as to the keeping of animals in residential properties. However, it doesn't specify the limit or the numbers, and it says that it's up to individual councils to determine nature, type, species, and numbers of animals to be kept in residential properties. So the policy you see before you for the keeping of animals policy has been updated from the one we currently had to reflect current trends we're seeing.
So how much difference is there between the current policy and the proposed policy?
Not a lot. The only difference is that we've added things. We've seen an increase in applications for people wanting to keep bees. So that's been included in the policy.
Yeah.
The number of dogs and cats hasn't changed. It's always been 2 each. We've also
There's 4 cats.
Yeah. So that's right. So 4 is 2 dogs and 4 cats.
Yeah.
We've also seen an increase in the request for keeping of like goats and sheep on rural residential properties as well. And things like that. So all of those things have been included to incorporate into how we control and manage those things. In the event that we do receive community concerns or complaints, then we have an avenue to provide some level of control over it.
I noted with interest that you're not allowed to keep roosters or peacocks. So do we have anybody overseeing compliance with that?
Only on complaint basis will we investigate.
I thought I might like one of those little baby cows, those miniature cattle. So I note that you weren't allowed to have those either. So.
Anything further on that?
My question's probably not directly relevant to this, but this policy refers to the keeping of pigeons. We have a significant emerging pigeon problem in this township. I walked down the main street, can verify that. They're roosting under the verandas, the St John's Church, the Civic Centre, under the bridge, all the way along Wharf Road. I think at some point we need to consider that and what action we might be able to take to alleviate some of that problem.
Have a reduction in numbers.
Sorry?
Have a reduction in numbers.
Yes.
Under the policy.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost getting out of hand, I think.
Councillor Beaumont, in reflecting on our previous discussions to this, it might be worth picking up the City of Melbourne manage their pigeons by providing them with nesting boxes and then removing the eggs regularly.
Sure.
But it's considered to be a humane approach.
Yep.
And that's, I saw that Parliament House had a rather large problem, and that was one of the strategies, along with fortifying the spikes around every top. But it's finding a solution in this day and age, I think, will be challenging. One that's acceptable to everybody.
There seems those statues getting offended too.
They do pose a health risk.
Councillor Chris, that could probably work for numerous types of animals around the place.
Councillor Hayward.
Yeah, it's not just in the town, it's rural properties and that there seems to be a really, the numbers are getting great everywhere. I haven't had pigeons mostly on my property for 10, 15 years, and now we've got them. Yeah, they're sort of in big numbers too.
So is the problem being compounded by people with racing pigeons? Though?
That is in Texas in Wentworth. Perhaps would, Mr. Mayor, would it be appropriate perhaps for us to move at this point to ask our Director of Health and Planning as a separate motion at some point to just prepare us a report on what the options are for us to consider, because they might be pretty skinny, unfortunately. But look, we have a policy to deal with.
Yeah, it's a pie. It's a pie.
Later.
Second that, all in favour? Carried. Right, 9.12, the Outlook subdivision at 92 to 94 Wood Street. Goal, it's a recommendation there, and we'll move this separately to open the discussion. It's the Rodder, it's the Chris. Open for discussion.
I did a drive-by of the developmental proposal allotment, and noted that there's a colorbond fence down Livingston Drive. Given the size proposed for the allotments, the width of those would be barely more than 2 colorbond panels wide, and given that's at the corner, which goes down into 2 different directions into future and current housing developments. It seemed like perhaps not entirely in along the lines of what's already there, which is noted in the application.
Any comments? Councillor Linklater.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So this is an interesting and challenging decision. From reading the resident submissions, I think they're quite compelling. There is a diversity of lot size in the area from the 600 to the 1,000 square metres, with the odd lot that I think dips below into the 500s. I think the resident submissions are based on a reasonable expectation that would arise from the 2020 Baronga Gold Structure Plan, namely that the minimum lot size is 600 square metres. However, I also acknowledge the desire to achieve some higher density residential offerings as time goes on. So, with those 2 competing arguments, my personal view is that the recommendation of the council officer strikes a balance between acknowledging the impacts of the proposed development put forward by the submissions from the residents, but it also gives the developer an opportunity to address the lot sizes to achieve an outcome somewhat closer to the 2020 Baronga Gold Structure Plan, namely to try and achieve a minimum lot size of 450 square metres.
I have an alternative motion, perhaps for council to consider that, and I agree with Councillor Linklater, although I think that the 450 lot size is still considerably less than what's listed in the Baronga Gold Structure Plan, and I think that figure should be 500.
So if I was to make a comment, I would say it's probably the consistency of the frontage, which would stand out to me at 9.8 metres. You've got 7 in a row at 9.8. I feel if there was some variation to that, some staggering of sizes, 9.8 might be okay for 1 or 2, perhaps a few more at double that, or just however the maths work out. But some variation in frontage would help in terms of achieving some higher density living, and perhaps still give a reasonable outcome to the developer. So I guess ultimately I'm suggesting be a lesser number of lots.
Okay, Councillor Chris.
I have taken on board some of the earlier comments by the proponents about car parking arrangements, because that's something that was a concern of the submissions we've received. And their assurance that 3 vehicles, 2 garaged and 1 parked in front would allow 3. On the higher lot size, which is the council's development recommendation, may well allow for more car parking than that, but I would hope that as the project does develop, that when buildings come to be placed on that a minimum of 3 car parking spaces will be preserved through that process and not varied upon, so as to keep that street as clear as possible. So that's perhaps a comment in the debate, so it's there, but within the council's minutes that a minimum of 3 cars I think is appropriate, which is 2 and a visitor, or as others have said, people accumulate other styles of vehicles.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Probably mostly through where we're saying the proposed development at this stage is for subdivision only. If it comes down, we hate the developers to think that those conditions may turn out to be fairly onerous on a small block of land. And you're right, because a very, very small, and with the proposal they're looking at what's proposed is for older people or people, they're saying 2 cars on and 1 on the at the front. That shouldn't be anywhere near what they're wanting, because if it's for the type of development that's being proposed, you won't have 2 or 3 cars per lot. However, we do have to have sufficient space at all times for anything that we're going to park anywhere. So
Perhaps as an older retiree, it might be more frequent visit by services or families, so you do need provision to make sure that doesn't congest the street. And as that concern that came up from the objectors.
yes, no issue.
Okay, Councillor Hagan.
Yeah, I'd like to second Councillor Rodder's amendment.
Okay, so that was to amend
500.
the lot size to a minimum of 500 square metres. Any discussion on that? Yeah, good. Sorry.
500's not far off the 600, and it probably places a fair amount of limitation on the developer in terms of breaking up the available land. We have talked about minimum lot size of 450, which, if you divided the available land up, would give 5 lots as opposed to 7 by my calculations. I don't know, it's a difficult one. We want to see development. We've got to cater for all age groups and lifestyles, but I think we do have to take into account all the submissions that have been provided by the objectors. Whether we put an actual figure on it or be committed by our health and planning director, I don't know.
Well, we've probably got a guide from the Director of Planning in the 450. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Councillor Whitlow.
Yeah, for my part, I don't want to support being any more prescriptive than what's in the recommendation. I think my reading of it, the recommendation is taking into account the submissions put forward, and it strikes a balance. And I think if we start inching our way up further and further, I don't think we've put the work into it that the council officers have. That's my view.
Councillor Cooper.
Just possibly looking at resizing that corner block where that island is, so it could go further past that island, so there's not going to be a bottleneck if there's cars parked out the front. So possibly have, excuse me, a bigger block on the corner, gets it past that island, so if there's cars parked out in the front, you can get around.
Tell us off the Wood Street.
Yes, yeah.
I think about 20 metres in the depth on the house block, which is on one. Is that correct?
Yes,
Is that 20 metres?
that's correct. 20, and then it's consistently at 9.83 from there
I'll
on.
definitely get it past that island.
It's on page 36 of attachment 6. I think.
Right, any other discussion on that point? So you've got an amendment to the motion to have a minimum lot size of 500 square metres. Those in favour? Against? Motion's defeated. Back to the recommendation, leader and second to four. Perhaps for
We go back to yours,
clarity,
don't you?
Director Carlin, we're
Don't you
looking
we
at
go back to yours?
giving a
then?
third commencement
Supporting what's here.
consent
that's
for an 8-lot subdivision.
Yes.
So you get 8 lots of 450 square RE if that's one of your conditions.
Correct, so in the attachment, you'll see a schedule of deferred commencement conditions in draft. And it does say, in the deferred commencement conditions, that prior to an operational notice of termination, the following additional information and plan shall be submitted to council satisfaction as amended subdivision plan. All proposed lots having a minimum area of 450 square meters and a construction agreement, et cetera, between landowners and sewerage reticulation and a whole bunch of other things in there. But the main issue tonight is the lot size. So in the deferred commencement conditions, we do say amend plan subdivision, nominating 450 square meters per lot before they get operational approval.
Okay, so the 8 lots is basically the relevant recommendation.
Correct, because the 8 lots is what's being presented to us currently, and the 450 would then require amendment.
In line with what the officer said, I'll move the recommendation.
Been, yeah, it's been moved.
There's no councillors, Chris, you made an amendment. Happy to move the recommendation?
No, I'm not.
You're not?
I can't support that 450. So someone else will have to move it. I'll withdraw my moving.
Councillor Nichols, are you happy to move the
Well,
recommendation?
you said they've already moved it though, didn't you?
One was councillor Rose moved it, but open for discussion.
Open
Oh, yeah.
for discussion.
She's not happy to continue.
I'll move it.
Councillor Chris, you have the second. Any other comment? All in favour? Motion's carried. Against? Councillor Waller. And we need a division, so those in favour? You're not Councillor Waller. Alright, moving on to 9.13, another development application, one for dwelling with garage and dwelling and garage at 77 Wentworth Street. There's a a recommendation there that council approve the DA being the garage at 75 to 77 Wentworth Street, Call Division. And a mover, thank you, Councillor Cooper, second Councillor Hayward. You will see reading through the purpose which came into council is due to a variation to its distance from the higher bank of the river. The recommendation is that we approve it on the basis that the information is there. It's very consistent with the other properties on the riverfront there. I went over and had a look at the Sabi actually, and the front of this one is smack in line with the one next door. And the one further downstream is probably 5 to 10 metres out in front of them, so yeah, I can't see anything from my point of view that would support the recommendation. Any other comments? All in favour? Carried. Division. Unanimous. Okay, 9.14, the delegated authority approvals as of the end of May. Recommendation there. The mover, Councillor Linklater, second Councillor Rodder. Any discussion? All in favour? Carried. 9.15 is the policy review, Department of Roads and Engineering. And they are the asset management policy and the adopting the fencing and bridge policy. Now the mover, please, Councillors Rodder and Nichols. Any discussion? All in favour? Carried. 9.16, the project and works report update, this recommendation there, can I have a mover and seconder please? Councillor Linklater, Councillor Hayward, open for discussion.
I'd just like to make a comment on the works out at the oval at Dearton there. Fantastic to have the parking area and the road around. It's and if anybody's been there on Saturday to see the football, it's amazing how many people are involved, either spectators or, you know, it's a venue now that's really getting used. And when you go to other places, ours seems to be a lot superior, so it's great.
And it is good to hear that, not just from one-eyed locals, it's across a lot of the district, including over the river, that we have a really good facility out there.
Yep.
Which, you know, is a credit to the council and to the community that put it all together, so.
The parking's fantastic. You can get very close to wherever you want to get to.
Really top job, and I did pass there this morning on the way to the rural fire service presentations at the Kenya Club, and I'll see that kitchen's going in and told on that, so. Still good, great facility.
The girls are even got proper coffee machines there now. You get a latte.
Oh, you yourself.
I'm not into that, but I mean, the first day they actually run out of coffee and at 2:00, and they thought they shut down because that was the time, but it wasn't. They just run out of gear.
All right, any other discussion? Councillor Linklater.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just wanted to note the final scope for the project design from Public Works for the Golgol East Raw Water System is expected to be finalised on the 15th of July, and we very much look forward to that report.
Excellent. Councillor Rodder.
Just in regards to the local traffic projects, and I know that it's been funded by the people who own the supermarket, the IGA footpath project, and it is almost complete. It's looking fabulous. So the it's not really practical for people to cross the road there, walk up the path that's in front of the oval, and then back across the highway to head down the midway. So it's a relatively short distance. I would like to, for consideration, to continuing the path from where it's heading to the crossover over to the oval, from the end of the supermarket footpath development through to the midway.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's an obvious connection from the marketplace to Midway Centre, and that development that's going on behind the Midway Centre.
We'll just make some historical comment in relation to this. So, the adjoining land, you know the history. Do you want to talk about it, Matthew?
Of
The camera land is not allowed to have any more allotments fronting the highway.
Yeah.
So it's designed to have a service road go from where you're talking up to Midway. So to give frontage through a service road to larger allotments of land in the camera lines, basically. So what you're asking for is a long-term development goal within the structured land. But whether you want to go and put a path through there now, and then when cameras or someone's ready to develop, whether you want to have that all reinvented and redesigned and put together.
Were they to have a service road off the highway, just past the supermarket development, would that not just take out, road width of that footpath though? And it could be.
Where's the offsets? Where's the services? Where's the footpath going to go? Where's the service road going to go?
Well, it would follow along the similar line as the supermarket footpath. Have you actually tried walking along that path that's on an angle like you just about need to be a mountain goat?
Well, I must go close, but yes,
No.
I see, Joe, the long-term objective is to have a footpath further away from the highway and probably on the subdivision side of the service road, just so that you don't end up with pedestrians between the service road and the highway.
I don't mind. I was just relaying history the way.
Could be another.
Camera land doesn't get any more further access to the highway, so it's actually got a bit of a service road for us.
So it could be another 20 years before that's opened.
I'll disagree with that.
Alright, anything else? Councillor Hayland?
There's a long-term thing here, Pink Lakes. I'm glad that they've come up with the design for the pipes to go out there. Been a long time trying to push that one. Looks like it's getting closer. Just
What are we on?
573. We're looking through the project report.
Okay, anything else?
I was just wondering, is there any further update on the astronomy park, given that I think the funding had a time limit on it?
Site's under further investigation in relation to some remediation work. So until we know the outcome of the requirements of that remediation, the project will remain in limbo until further information comes to hand.
The timeline.
The timeline is definitely won't be met, but whether the entire project's in jeopardy or not, I'm not too sure. With the funding bodies, you always ask for extensions if you need them or additional money or whatever the case may be.
Okay, Councillor.
Yeah, just a couple of things here. The Junction Island Bridge, this has been ongoing for at least the last 10 years. And currently we have the ramp and abutment plan again being updated. When are we likely to have this bridge?
it's there.
It's on over where it's supposed to be?
No, well, it's made.
I know it's made, it says it's made, it's been delivered to Wentworth, but it says the ramp and abutment plan is currently being updated.
It's requested in this very council chamber that we try and get the maximum height between the water and the
So the boats can get under.
So there's a redesign to try and get close to 2 metres, we're looking at probably achieving about 1.9 metre clearance between the water and the other side of the bridge, and that's probably about as much as we're going to get, to be perfectly honest. So, a young project,
Costings on that?
we're still working on that, so, one of the project engineers is working on that. Now, the abutments and the gradients on the ramps and other bits and pieces to take into account about 1.9 metre water clearance.
I know about the height and that is, if you get it too low, when we get floods, it's gonna get caught up with debris and get washed away anyway. So the further we can get it up in the air, away from flood levels, be like the caravan park, it's something that we're going to get one day, a flood, so.
I mean, that's the design of the abutments and sheet piling and trying to negate that erosion around or underneath the bridge, so that's the work that's being undertaken as we speak.
Alright, anything else? All in favour? Carried. Okay, 10.1 is notice of motions, questions without notice. There was a motion there by councillor Chris. In that council makes provision in the 22-23 budget for the upgrade of the access road and the walking track at the Kenyan Golf Club wetlands, and inform the Murray-Darling Wetlands Working Group of council's commitment to the project, that's supported by a copy of the letter from the Murray-Darling Wetlands Working Group. Bit of a background there and a report. Would you like to speak, councillor Chris?
Yeah, I'd like to move the motion with an amendment, and for Gail, on the last line of the motion, it says Lands Working Group of Council's commitment, and I'd like to insert the words in principle to the project. Now, I presume, Mr Mayor, that is an amended motion, or can we deal with it as?
Sure, motion, so you just,
Happy to second it as amended?
you happy with that?
Yep.
Second of councillor Linklater, any further discussion? All in favour? Carried.
Notice of motion, we're doing this. Oh, no, okay. First of the notice.
Moving into confidential.
What about the notice of motion and questions with notice?
Yeah.
I haven't got one, but it's there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, questions with notice.
Sorry, I've just taken that as that. Councillor Nichols.
Yes, can we please have the signs on the old road going up the back there saying they're closed be reflective of the actual position? In other words, if you're gonna go past two closed signs before you can actually get on the road, just take the closed signs away and say restricted traffic.
You'd have trucks turning and everything out there, you know.
Yeah, but I had a man in a car who's going crook. He went to the thing and said the road was closed, he turned around and went back.
But if there's one near the showgrounds there saying that the road's closed, you haven't gone too far to turn around and come back.
Yeah, but Ken has said that he drives past the first two and then he gets through the open part. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, I went out there to inspect the work.
Yes.
And there are heavy trucks and rollers and
not
ladies
used.
and stuff going backwards and forwards, water truck going backwards and forwards. So,
Well then,
Can I just say that we'll review the signage and make sure it's adequate,
yes,
protect our liabilities in relation to closed road and work sites and work health and safety issues.
well then
I
isn't,
mean, the one resident out there, he comes and goes as he pleases.
well then is it actually going to be actual that it's going to be October before the road's finished? I think if that's
I think that's the program to put the final seal on, whether the subgrade and all the rolling and the compaction's done in the earlier name where it can be open to local traffic.
Like Fletcher's Lake was
Yeah.
between quarries.
Yeah,
I'll take your question on notice and I'll get a definitive sort of timeline of what, yeah. You wouldn't want a car going out there tonight.
No.
In terms of their stockpile and things, packed up rough material and stuff, so you don't want any of that.
Thank you.
Councillor Ruddock. Councillor Hayward.
right, thanks.
Councillor Linklater. Councillor Chris.
I've got one, a quick report that the centenary of Viet Cunha was on in 2024. There's a committee formed and I'm sure of that committee. That's just for council's information. The other is perhaps for the Director of Health and Planning. In Dearden, behind the supermarket, there is a block of flats that are abandoned. My information is that the last of the squatters has moved out, and it's not, in my view, safe. But I'd like you to look at the site to see if you can assess whether it's safe for the public and what actions we can take to ensure that something's done.
I don't think it'd be the first time that it's been mentioned in this jargon.
Rats have been seen coming out of there from local health workers, so it's not good.
Isn't that the responsibility of the person who owns the property? Shouldn't we be sending them a clean-up notice?
From Melbourne, I think we have.
Numerous times.
What's the next step?
Demolished.
The next step then is, he every time I send him an updated notice of intention or an order, he keeps saying, can I please have more time because of X, Y, Z. That went on about 2 times, to the point now where the next step is, because he's not responding to the notices or the orders, is that council then undertakes legal action against him and seeks the enforcement of the orders through the court. But we'd have to go through the process again of notice, then order, and then court.
I think we should go down that track because it's disgusting. For so long.
Yeah.
Too long.
And it's not safe. There's broken glass. It's not safe for children or anyone who might wander in there. So yes, I appreciate if we could start the process again. And
Totally agree.
I was only over there a matter of a few weeks ago on that and I did inspect the units with one of the people who were there last and it was very uncomfortable going through some of those things.
thank you.
Yeah, just call it, take advantage. How long was it? I mean, the only street was fire, but we ended up making that, it was just a sort of, yeah, it's not on the food.
Remains a debt upon the land, so just forecasting that you're actually, which is fine.
It will be a cost.
There will be a cost of it.
I think that's important to include that. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper. Councillor Barnard.
I have a question with notice. We have a significant curb and guttering problem, possibly due to a water leak or similar, in front of the residences of 34, 36 and 38 Cadell Street. We have stagnant water collecting and laying there 52 weeks of the year. So it's an ongoing issue. Approximately 45 metres in length, 3 metres or thereabouts in width at its widest. The problems existed for several years and significantly impacts on the egress for residents at 36 Cadell Street. The only access to 36 Cadell Street is via their driveway. There is no footpath. It's an uneven nature strip. So for the occupants of 36 Cadell Street, with mobility issues and failing eyesight, and now limited transport options, I think we need to address the problem. You can't get down the driveway without gumboots or across the crossover. without gumboots, and for an older person to walk along the nature strip, they would, with failing eyesight, they would risk tripping or falling. So I think we've got an issue there that we need to address. That's been ongoing for far too long.
So we've had both the water and wastewater and the civil works team look at it. We'll put some renewed curb sections in, some precast curb sections in there, and we're trying to establish where the actual leaking water is coming from. Because like I said, 52 years a year without the rain events that we have, so someone's got a leak. So we're trying to establish the.
You check the water rates?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like I said, look at the bill.
It's in the street.
It's in the street. That has to be.
Mm.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're putting some precast curb in there and trying to find the cause of the leak.
So it's going to be addressed.
Alright, councillor Linklater, would you like to?
I would like to so move. I move that council adjourn into closed session, the recording of the meeting be suspended, and members of the press and public be excluded from the closed session, and that access to the correspondence and reports relating to the items considered during the course of the closed session be withheld unless declassified by separate resolution.
Okay, I have a seconder. Councillor Beaumont, all in favour, carried.
Just one point of clarification, the water's coming out of what we guess the wheels down pipes.
Yeah, and we're off camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think lights on.
Well,
See,
thank you.
Abbot's got the race on this weekend. 800 riders are
Thank you,
registered.
Mr Mayor. In the closed council business of this evening, in item 12.1, extension to Wentworth Growing Club, that council, in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government General Regulation 2005, accepts the tender from LP and J Wilkie Limited to carry out the extension of Wentworth Growing Club, contract PZ 2122/16, in the amount of $308,330, including GST, and authorise the Mayor and myself to sign the contract documentation. And further to that, the council allocated an additional $111,347 plus 10% contingency in support of the Stronger Country Community Fund to cover the budget shortfall. In relation to item 12.2, the tranche agreement, that council accept the deed of settlement and release and authorise the Mayor and General Manager to sign the agreement and affix the council seal. Further to that, council brought in a late item 12.3, the closed business for BT 2122/17 Event Management Services tender, and it was resolved by the council in that the council, in accordance with the provisions of Local Government General Regulation 2005, accept the tender from events and subsequently authorise the Mayor and General Manager to sign the contract documentation and fix the seal for the recommended contractor to carry out all work specified in that tender for an amount of $249,630, inclusive of GST. That was the business in closed council tonight, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, councillors. I will now declare the meeting closed. See you back here.